Hey, welcome everybody. Hi, my name's Chester Louie. I'm actually one of the Chrome customer engineers. I'm based here in Mountain View, California. And today I wanted to highlight what we're actually covering. We're going to be covering how to secure your endpoints with Chrome Enterprise. So hopefully everybody had a good lunch. Before we get started, I wanted to just take a quick poll. How many users out there use Chrome browser? Out there, so it's a good majority of the folks in this room. How about Chrome OS? That's a good percentage. So before I kind of get started, I wanted to share a real quick backdrop. Why did Google begin on this endeavor of creating Chrome, right? So we're actually coming up on a 10-year anniversary. So back in 2008, Chrome was a 20% project at Google. Right, so what is a 20% project? It was a project in which a bunch of researchers, scientists, software developers worked on, and they started this back in 2006. So in the course of 2 years, they were able to produce a brand new browser based on 3 founding core principles: speed, security, and simplicity. Right, and so with that, I'm going to be highlighting that a little bit here in a moment. Before we get started, so let's take a look at the agenda. In the first section, I'm actually going to be covering a little bit about the industry insights. In the second session, I'm going to talk about securing your endpoints with Chrome Enterprise. And in the third section here, we're going to be highlighting a little bit about how Google itself keeps our enterprise users secure. And the last portion is one of our actual partners that we work with today, Dual Security. So we'll actually introduce both Jason and Josh from Dual Security as part of our customer spotlight here shortly. So with that, I'm going to kind of jump right into really the beginning sort of where are we from an enterprise standpoint, right? So as more and more applications are developed for the cloud, we are at the center of a large major initiative, especially from, espionage, all the different things that are happening online, to cyber crimes and cyber attacks. So you see these headlines across the board, right? I think none of this is an actual surprise. I think the big thing to really keep in mind here is, what is Google really investing in? And there's actually primarily comprised of 2 things. One is device management, and the other portion is also security, right? So those are 2 pieces that are very, very important. And here's why. So let's take a look at the profile of an average enterprise user today. And this is probably many of you that are out there in the audience. Employees on average use 22 different cloud-based apps. Among those cloud-based apps, you have approximately 3 devices that you use. Most likely a mobile device, maybe an actual stationary device that you might have at your desk or at home, and also a device that you might also use as a portable mobile device. With that, you take a look at the heart of what's really at stake. The data that's collected and stored for enterprises is at the center of what we call enterprise in the crosshairs of cyber attacks, right? Corporate data is a lot more valuable than consumer data. And the realization of that is we've actually taken a look working with researchers out in the field and realized that both phishing and malware, right, are 2 things that are not only targeted, but Google's essentially conducted research that has showed that enterprise users are 6.2 times more likely to be targeted for phishing attacks and 4.3 times more likely to receive malware than an end user, right? These are staggering statistics between a corporate user versus a consumer user. Understanding the landscape. So research has been conducted. By the year 2019, we anticipate approximately $2.1 trillion of global cost associated with data breaches. And the folks that are probably the most vulnerable are actually all the employees out there of corporations, right? And this is due to negligence, due to phishing, right? External threats that are not entirely controllable. And then the shift to, again, the way that we're managing endpoints, right? So as more and more applications move to the cloud, we really have to rethink about the ways that we are managing, are capable of managing endpoints in the cloud and also for an end user today. So how do we do that? So with Chrome Enterprise, our approach is comprised of 3 different pillars. First, it's the proactive protections that we have in place. So when we actually mention proactive protections, we're talking about security at every layer. I'll talk about this further in the next slide, but it's more about an actual secure operating system that has Google security-backed hardware that can attest whether or not the operating system has ever been modified, right? Evolving defenses. Chrome OS, Chrome browser, they release on a rapid release cycle every 6 weeks. This has been something that we've actually developed and we've leveraged from the beginning of the actual platform design, right? So the benefits are very clear. We're also seeing a lot of other platforms adopt the same type of rapid release cycle. And then lastly, the granular controls. Because of the 6-week release cycle that we have in place today, we're able to very rapidly actual benefit from feature requests from consumers as well as customers. And so therefore, what we can do is we can actually develop a lot of these features on the fly within an 18-week release cycle. So let's take a look at the first multi-layered interlocking defenses that we have currently with Chrome OS and Chrome browser. So if you take a look from the top down, so the first thing that we list is hardware, right? Hardware is something that I think many of you have seen these devices out there during the course of this week. So we have a Pixelbook, right, which is essentially our reference design from a platform or hardware perspective. That hardware has what we actually refer to it as a Google security module. So this Google security module performs what's called verified boot. And during that verified boot process, in under, on average, about 7 seconds, we're able to boot the hardware, check the firmware on the device, verify that the OS is an actual genuine version that matches the signature algorithm using verified boot. Then we can also load the browser as well as force install or restrict applications and extensions that have to be installed in the browser and also on the operating system. So this is how it all works. It's all interlocked as a result of that security defense system that we have in place. And I mentioned earlier, obviously, the 6-week release cycle, right? The benefits of that is we've strived to have the highest security standards. This includes annual hackathons that we host. We have very large millions of dollars of bug bounties that are out there today that not only do consumers benefit from this technology, but also the ability for us to very rapidly patch security bugs on the fly, right? So if you take a look at Chrome browser versus some of the other browsers that are out there, Chrome has a significant higher phishing catch rate than, let's say, Microsoft Explorer. We also, again, to reiterate the patch security bugs, on average, lists 60 days. I would tell you that if it's an actual P0, let's say, security bug or a 0-day exploit, our turnaround time on that is on average about 24 hours. So how do we protect our employees at Google, right? So there's actually 3 main sort of core principles. One is, and you might have heard about this in the news actually this week, Google implemented hardware-based security keys back in 2017, so this was last year. In the course of the last year, we have had 0 phishing vulnerabilities. 0. So among the 80,000 employees that we actually have at Google, we've now eliminated phishing for the first time. Safe browsing. Safe browsing is a technology that not only leverages artificial intelligence, but Google's ML capabilities. And what I mean by that is we actually review over 10,000 websites a day, and we can immediately flag or deem a website as malicious. And if an actual website is deemed malicious, what the user actually receives is a warning box to not only notify them that this is an insecure and malicious website, but they have the option to proceed if they wish to, right? But it really kind of touts the fact that there is built-in security controls, not only at the browser level, but also at the OS layer. And then Chromebooks offer the ability to do auto updates while the user is in session. So this is another thing that, you know, I'm using a Chromebook up here today. This Chromebook could actually be receiving a brand new update while I'm actually presenting. And that update could be readily available, and all I have to do is reboot the device. In under 7 seconds, the device will auto update with a new version of the operating system. So let's talk about some of the features of Chrome Enterprise. So I mentioned Chrome Enterprise. Chrome Enterprise is, you know, in a nutshell, it's comprised of two things. It's the ability to manage Chrome browser for the enterprise, and also the ability to manage Chrome OS, so any type of Chrome OS devices that are in the enterprise today. There's 4 different areas that I wanted to speak specifically about. So let's take, for example, user policies. Why are those important? User policies follow users wherever they actually sign into a device. So maybe there's an actual policy that I want to enforce, such as the ability to disable the webcam. And I can enforce that as, let's say, a user policy. So anytime that user signs into a device, that policy goes into effect, no matter what device they actually use. Device policies, on the other hand, are a little different. Device policies are specific to an actual device. Good example of that is when I actually go and disable the ability to use a USB thumb drive, for example. If I enforce that as a local policy on that device will actually disable either the USB thumb drive mounting capability, or I can even enforce a device policy such as wipe user data, right? So that can actually turn the device into a very ephemeral device. Managing apps and extensions, I have the ability to create my own web store, right? So for all your enterprises out there that need corporate enterprise marketplaces for apps, you can manage your apps, you can manage your extensions. And in the most recent update, we've actually extended some of these capabilities to not only managing apps and extensions, but the permissions behind apps and extensions. And we found out that that was actually really important, especially from enterprises that wish to not only, let's say, manage a whitelist of actual apps and extensions, but behind that were permissions such as I wanted apps to not have so many, hooks into the user cache or the user data on the device. And so I can limit apps and extensions based on permission sets there. And lastly, fleet management. This is a very important piece for us for the Chrome Enterprise umbrella, is the ability to manage provision devices behind the scenes and also track assets in the enterprises today. We've also heard from the enterprises that they want a lot of these APIs made available. So we've been taking a lot of those requests and making those APIs to expose device information for other device metrics and needs out in the enterprises today. And this is actually one of my favorite slides. So when we started 7 years ago, when Chrome OS was born, the first thing that we launched was a cloud-based device management portal. It's actually called the Google Admin Console. Many of you might be familiar. It's the same console that you use to manage if you're a G Suite user, if you're a GCP user. Again, it's this cloud portal. It's everything that you can imagine. It's the umbrella that manages all of the Google services out there in the enterprise. We realized after launching that many of the enterprises out there wanted more. And so what did we do? So we took a look at some of the partnerships, and most recently, we've launched 5 new partnerships with EMM providers out there today. The first one to actually launch is VMware AirWatch. So starting earlier this year, VMware AirWatch has the capability to manage Chromebooks. So if you already have an EMM provider out there, this would essentially allow you to put everything under a single pane of glass from a device management strategy standpoint. Obviously, I mentioned AirWatch, IBM Mass 360, Zoho, Citrix Zen Mobile, and also Cisco Meraki are following suit. This is in the first half of 2018. We've launched 5. We're anticipating on launching several additional more EMM partnerships later this year. So that's actually a really, really important investment on our part in expanding the footprint of Chrome devices under management in the enterprise space. And lastly, the ability to domain join Chromebooks to Active Directory. This is something that's brand new. It's definitely in the marketplace today. We have customers that are actually beta testing this at the moment. This gives you the ability to leverage, for example, if your infrastructure is primarily comprised of a Microsoft AD environment, you can now take a Chromebook and actually join that Chromebook to your Active Directory and leverage Microsoft's group policy object to managing Chromebooks. So this allows you to, some of the use cases that have come up regarding this is the ability to manage devices that don't need to have to talk to or be online to the internet and always connected to the internet at all times. So we've had some scenarios where that has come up from a use case perspective. And the other piece is the integration with Active Directory. Meeting customers, obviously where you're at in the enterprise today is very, very important. So these are the three major ways that we have that allow you to manage Chrome devices and also Chrome browser in the enterprise today. And lastly, we made a big announcement about a year and a half ago at Google I/O, the ability to support Android apps on Chrome OS, right? Why is this distinction very, very important? We are announcing some new capabilities, right, which unlock a lot of the application gaps, or I'll call it legacy applications, that need to be accessed on a Chromebook. That's one of the reasons why we integrated the Google Play Store with Chrome OS. And then secondly, the Google Play Store has the same Google Play Protect capability as your mobile devices that you use today. Google Play Protect is built-in machine learning and AI that can verify, right? We currently verify over 50 billion apps on a daily basis. We have the ability to do reputation analysis. We fingerprint all apps. We can, any apps that have a malicious intent automatically get detected and blocked, right? And so the same protection that you are used to on Android has now made it over to Chrome OS, and we're leveraging the same technology. So let's talk real quickly about how Google thinks about application access control. So there is a methodology that we use today. Google's written several white papers. Our team of researchers have written several white papers on this. It's actually called the BeyondCorp model. So for those of you that are not familiar with BeyondCorp, and Google leverages this methodology today, is the ability to take any corporate endpoint device and allow you to access corporate applications without the use of a VPN. So treating every user as an external user, right? And why is that important? Well, first off, we think of this in three different buckets. We take a look at the users, we take a look at the applications, and we take a look at the devices that they use. And when we do that, we use a method called tiered access. So based on the device that you use, based on your credentials, and if we take a look at the profile of the user, if you match a risk profile, we can block you from a certain list of applications that you should not have access to, right? And so when you take a look at that, here's just a very quick example. You might have a small number of users that are using mobile devices. We can limit those devices, right, to just having access to the cafeteria menu. You might have, in extreme use cases where, let's say I'm a software engineer, I need access to the code base, for example, on an application that Google writes. In that type of scenario, and let's say it's an actual Chromebook, I can enforce policies that allow the user to have full access to the code base, but I also have the ability to do full logging and full forensic capability on that device if I need to. So to summarize, there's really three things, right? Endpoints are changing. The way that we're managing endpoints is changing. The applications are moving more and more to cloud-based applications today. it's very, very critical regarding the ways that we actually, how we are managing devices. Security at the browser and security at devices and at the OS level are essential to the way that we're managing endpoints today, right? And lastly, we talked about the Beyond Corp model. We're working to actually take this model and present it to a larger customer base, right? So Beyond Corp is a model that we've published white papers on, but we're also integrating Beyond Corp with an integrated and aware proxy technology that runs on GCP, which essentially is a cloud proxy, right? And this is where we're actually leveraging the capability to not only analyze the users that are logging into applications, but we can also risk assess the profile of a user before we grant or deny access to an application. So with that, I want to reiterate, obviously, Chrome Enterprise is, again, comprised of two things. It's the ability to manage Chrome OS, and it's also an enterprise capability to manage Chrome browser. For browser, this is across just more than one platform. We can support the ability to manage browser on Windows, as well as Mac and Linux and other platforms that are out there today. So with that, I wanted to introduce both Jason and Josh from Dual Security, and they're going to tell you a little bit about how they're leveraging Chrome OS in the enterprise today. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chester. Oh yeah, I do kind of need this, huh? It's kind of important. Hi everyone, I'm Jason. Thanks for coming out today and coming to our session here. So, and this is Josh, by the way. So he'll do a little intro here in a second too. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Duo Security, we're a cloud-based trusted access provider. We're protecting thousands of the world's fastest and largest and fastest growing organizations. So we're a mid-market unicorn, which is kind of cool, kind of unique. We've got about 700 employees. A lot of them are located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But we do have offices throughout the U.S. and then obviously one in the U.K. And our mission is pretty simple. I mean, our mission is to protect your mission. Whatever it is that you are doing on a daily basis, we want to make sure that you can do that to the best of your ability. So let's talk about our fleet. So right now our fleet's about 14% Chrome OS, a little over 100 Chromebooks right now. Historically, it's been as high as 25% before, but due to hyper growth, that number's kind of stretched a little bit. And the way we went about this is we really started by focusing on our most at-risk users, people like C-level execs, people like recruiters, those people that were exposed to a lot of outside materials coming in. And what we found was that through that, we actually got managers on board. We got our entire customer service engineering department is on board. We've got other engineers, software engineers, product engineers. These guys are all using these devices as their daily drivers, which is actually really cool. And then to cap it off, we're actually starting to see penetration into sales now, which historically I think is a tough group to make changes to, and so they're just starting to buy in as well. All of this has been pretty opt-in, which has been really cool. So a lot of promoters in the organization, and I would always encourage you guys, if you're about to roll these out, try to find promoters. You know, let those people actually be, you know, your big supporters in this. So let's also talk a little bit about why Chrome OS and why it works for Duo. So, you know, as an IT admin, I look at kind of three big things, right? There's this, you know, what is the user, how user-friendly is it? How easy is it to manage? And then most importantly, how secure is it, right? So Chrome OS, I mean, the security feature availability is just, it's beyond other platforms right now. In particular, I think of, you know, application whitelisting, which Josh is going to touch on a little bit. And we're also using, Chester mentioned the verified boot. You know, it prevents the persistent malware from going out there, right? I don't know how many times we've spent hours trying to fix that in the past. So, and then you also have Google's Verified Access API too, which Josh will also touch on. So, those are just a few of the features that are extremely important to us and why it really works at Duo. And then these endpoints are also really, you know, endpoints of service. I mean, we can get these out into the wild very quickly. We use them as loaners. You know, if somebody loses it or if it breaks, they're easy to replace, they're easy to get back into. Which then kind of brings me to my last point. Deployment time for these devices is actually about 10% of any other platform we have. I can go from a fully boxed, wrapped up Chromebook to the user completely running again in under a few minutes. From a scalability standpoint, from a help desk standpoint, that's huge. So the more that we can do that, the better off we'll be. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh. He's going to go a little bit deeper into the security things that we're using too.
Thanks, Jason. So I'm happy to be here to talk about how we use Chrome OS from a security perspective and how we've really built a really strong but also usable security story on top of the platform. So, you know, we've heard that Chrome OS leads the way in security capabilities. So let's dig into that a little bit more and figure out like why it's so important to us and why we think it should be important to everyone who has endpoints that they need to protect. So endpoint trust is really, really important. And that starts at the hardware and firmware level. And when you think about the problem of how at the time of boot or how at the time of sign-in or usage of this device to access something I care about, can I remotely attest to the safety and security of this platform? That's really hard to accomplish on even server infrastructure, where you have a lot more control and it's a much more static environment. But on Chrome OS, we're able to lean on verified access. And that helps us establish that baseline of trust from boot to sign-in to access, and that's something that we're unable to get in any other platform. From a malware prevention perspective as well, we're able to apply application whitelisting. Now, we took a poll of hands of who's deployed Chrome OS in their fleets. Can I see those hands again really quick? Who has Chromebooks that they manage? All right, now keep your hand up if you're doing application whitelisting. Yeah, it can be easier, right? And we heard some exciting things as far as like new features that do make it easier. We'll talk in a couple minutes about like what we've done to actually extend our capabilities and enhance our application whitelisting process at Duo. But that's something that we employ both for Chrome extensions as well as for Android applications in our Chrome fleet. For logs, you know, one of the things that's most important to us is parity across all of our platforms. You know, you heard from Jason that we're mostly macOS. We have a sizable deployment of Chrome OS. I can count the number of Windows machines that we have on two hands, and that's a really good situation to be in from my perspective, because it makes management a lot easier. But we want logs where they're useful to us. And one of the things that we've been able to figure out is how to actually do some custom host instrumentation on Chrome OS, specifically achieving parity in things like DNS logs, which when you think about the risks that still exist to your Chrome OS users, it's generally browser-based risks that you need to mitigate and be able to detect and respond to. So being able to answer the question of who visited that phishing website can now be answered through some customization in a Chrome extension that we ship out to our fleet. Endpoint recovery. So if you think about what happens when things do go wrong, whether it's hardware failure or whether it's a security concern due to compromise, on any of our other platforms, that's a really tricky process. You're trying to recover data from the device. You're trying to basically redeploy a new device in many cases as the shortest path to success, but that path still includes potential data loss or a higher likelihood of data loss at the very least, and it also requires a lot of time and hands-on effort both from the end user as well as help desk. And so being able to quickly power wash a Chromebook and be able to just redeploy it instantly, and even better, be able to take a managed Chromebook and ship it without needing to worry about anything happening to it in transit because of that verified access component, that makes it a lot easier for us to support and secure remote employees. Finally, protecting against emerging threats. Everybody cares a lot about zero-day threats and emerging threat actors and tools, techniques, and procedures that come with them. And one of the things that we love about our Chrome experience is that we don't really have to worry that much about patch cycles. We know that if something critical emerges affecting either the operating system or the browser, that Google's able to demonstrate the agility to actually get those fixes to those endpoints faster than any other provider that we have currently. Let's get into some of the areas I talked about just a little bit deeper. So verified access is something that we've actually partnered with Google on in the context of our own product. So we were very early adopters of verified access, and what this lets us do is turn on verified access within G Suite for our fleet, And what then on our product side, we're actually able to enforce that on all subsequent authentications that are protected by our product. And so we're able to do that internally for ourselves because we use our own product to protect our company. And we rely on this capability from Google to make it all work. Then application whitelisting. So, I mean, this has obvious benefits. We've talked a lot about it. You've heard a lot about it today. But it's not the easiest thing to do if you're getting started from zero and you're trying to go to full whitelisting. So a lot of times people will adopt a blacklist approach, and that's great. That makes it possible for you to say, these are dangerous scopes, I don't want to allow them from our Chrome extensions, or these are known bad extensions, perhaps, if they haven't made it out of the web store quite yet. But actually kind of going end to end and going from zero to full app whitelisting can be difficult because there's a human process of review involved. So what we were able to do was actually build out an internal tool we call Crexcavator. We went back and forth on how to pronounce that a lot, so feel free to insert your own pronunciation. But what we did with this was we said, okay, the security analysts that we expect to make whitelist or not whitelist decisions are not application security engineers. They're not able to download the code for the Chrome extension, evaluate it, and do all of that in a timely manner based on the skill sets that we expect them to have, nor with the speed that we need to respond to a customer when they request a new extension to be whitelisted. So we built a tool that would do a lot of that scanning for us and help us make relative risk assessment based judgments before actually whitelisting an application. So what this will let us do is, given a Chrome extension ID, it'll spit out a list of permissions and other indicators of risk. And so we'll enumerate all of the different permissions that are requested by the Chrome extension and do some high-level risk scoring. And this helps the analyst actually understand the why behind why this risk score is so high or low, and help communicate back to the requester why it was that this one extension and not this other one was a better fit for the use case that they're trying to solve. We also run a vulnerability scanner against the JavaScript that's actually visible when we download the Chrome extension. And especially when we're doing like vendor security assessments for a partner that we may subscribe to for a SaaS service where they require a Chrome extension, this really helps us get an understanding of their own security posture. And we can ask questions around, hey, are you aware of these vulnerabilities? And let's talk about your vulnerability mitigation cycle and patch cycle. And that's always a really good conversation to have. And to kind of close out the conversation, our goal is displacing macOS and Windows if it grows in our fleet, as a strategic priority. It's not that we ever think we're going to fully get rid of all the use cases there, at least not in the immediate future. But given our great experience in actually getting engineers, salespeople, and other users who are more typically dependent on Microsoft platforms or on macOS, we're really excited about the opportunities that we have to help actually provide not only a better experience for our employees, but also make it much more secure for them. The opt-in model that we've been successful with has been really great, and the champions that we've developed internally have made it so that we actually don't have to do that much work in order to generate excitement or demonstrate value to our internal employees. Our next steps in actually moving forward with this is opting in at a more strategic level and moving more towards a Chromebook by default deployment model, where we definitely want to be conscious of all the use cases that we need to be able to support, but making it so that the default device that we issue to people wherever possible is a Chromebook, and then actually having an exception handling process to then evaluate the business need for another platform. And with that, that's our story on how we've deployed Chrome OS and why we love it from a security perspective.